and welcome to the kuriaknits podcast. My name is Erin and I am so glad you've joined me here today. It is a very gloomy day indeed. Just got in from outside. I went to lunch with a friend and it was hailing sideways. And I think it has now stopped, but it is very gloomy and dark outside. So I've angled this a little bit closer to the windows over here than I usually do. So if things look a little tilted, that is why. I'm trying to get as much natural light on my face as possible, but if it's a little gloomier than usual, that is why. I'm gonna try and brighten it up in post, but we'll see what happens. Speaking of, this should be the last podcast in this house, which is very exciting. I'm moving literally in 2 weeks, so I'm hoping I will be able to get a podcast to you next week, or in 2 weeks, like usual. We get possession on the Thursday, and then the Friday, I'm just planning on painting. We're getting a few deliveries, and so I'm hoping I can do a podcast kind of in the empty house, because there'll be really no one around. My husband's working that day, it's a Friday, and then we're doing the big move on a Saturday. So I'm hoping my next podcast I can do maybe a little house tour and show you guys around. I was actually really hoping to be able to do some kind of vlogmas situation this year, but I think with everything going on and the chaos I'm about to show you, you'll understand why I don't think that'll be possible for this year. And instead, I think I'm going to be doing something special for January, some kind of January reset series. I've fallen into a lot of bad habits about how I prioritize my time, and I really just need to get back into a routine, and I think filming it and sharing it will be really helpful. I've got a few video ideas, some knit and chats. I really want to go through my unspun yarn and tell you what I think about that. I'd love to do my craft/office room, a before and after of that, and I've got a few other fun ideas, and it'll just kind of be me bringing you with me about how I build my life back together, put it back together piece by piece, and how I incorporate knitting into and crafting into my life. And I want to be a little bit more intentional about it. I find when I'm in more of a depressive episode, I'll sit and knit in front of the television for like 6 hours at a time. And while it is relaxing, I want to be able to make sure that I use this craft well instead of abuse it to be able to fill my mind with things that may not be as kind for myself. So I know that knitting can be something that both fills us up, but also can be a distraction from life. I know that it is for me, and so I'm going to be finding ways to incorporate knitting when not in front of the television. And yeah, if anyone has any advice for that, please let me know down below. What do you do while knitting? I'd love to get more back into audiobooks, and so I think that would be really helpful, but I'm definitely looking for a lot of other things to be able to do as well. If you can hear some crunching, my dog is chewing on his bone right below me. It's like a it's like a bone made out of rope, but the rope is kind of waxy somehow, and he loves to chew on it. It's his favorite thing, and because it's the waxiness, it doesn't fray, so I don't have to worry about all the little cords or whatever getting stuck. So I'd like to say thank you to everyone who shopped my yarn sale. It was such a joy to be able to chat to all of you. I'm sorry if you experienced the difficulty at the beginning. I didn't realize that there were 2 places at the Shopify backend where I just clicked on international shipping, and I'd only done it at one. So it took me a little while to figure out I had to do it in both ends, but it was ended up the mohair that I ended up selling secondhand ended up selling out within an hour, and they ended up going internationally. So if that reached you, it's all been shipped out. It got shipped out same day, but I would love to see what you make with it. There are some other fibers that weren't the mohair that people were most passionate about, I guess I could say, that I have gotten secondhand. So if you would like to shop any of those, there is a link down below. It is through a Shopify marketplace, so all the shipping is at a discounted rate, but I don't actually set those rates. So if shipping is a little steep, I'm so sorry. I think it's a little steep too, but it's the best I can do right now. If you have any questions about the fiber that you see there, please let me know. And yeah, I'm going to be closing the shop the next Friday, so December 9th, I think the 9th. So get in any of your purchases before then. That just avoids me having to pay a whole bunch of fees, which is not necessarily what I want out of this. But yeah, it's been a joy, and I think I would definitely do it again if I get another fiber in too large of a quantity that people are interested in purchasing. But yeah, definitely have a look down below. I think there's some good deals for fiber in there. And if I don't sell it on here, maybe I'll try it on Instagram next time. And I have a few of them up on Facebook Marketplace locally as well. So if you're selling fibers, those are all good places to try and sell your fiber as well. I know that some people sell on Ravelry, but it confuses me as to how it works, and I don't feel like figuring it out. So that's that. For knitting, I am unhinged. I have things to show you that are going to be put on the back burner very soon, because amongst all of the chaos of gift knits that I'm trying frantically to finish, I signed up for 2 tests thinking I would get maybe one, probably none, and I got both. Of course I got both. Even for a designer who I signed up for all of her tests in the last 6 months and haven't gotten a single one, she decided to grace me with a test this time around. And don't get me wrong, I'm extremely grateful. I applied, I did this to myself, but I'm like, the universe would do this to me. So my priorities in what I'm knitting on after this are going to be dramatically changing, and they have in the last week as well. But yeah, I have complete chaos to show you. I was also in Ottawa last weekend. I got to meet the beautiful Night Sky Knitting in person, so I will leave her details down below. She's a delightful person. And I also got to purchase a little bit of yarn, spend time with my best friend, of course, and I also got a special yarn order in, so I think it's going to be an exciting episode. I'll try and leave it on the shorter end, but I will start with what I'm wearing. So, am I wearing an unfinished, unblocked Moby sweater as a pullover? Yes, I am. Because of things I'm going to talk about, am not going to be able to finish the sleeves on this thing in the next month. And it was at the perfect length to just kind of wear as a slip over. And I like the way it looks. I think it's fine. I mean, obviously this edging has no finishing on it, so it's a little bit rough. Finished the neck, the body's completely done. And I said, you know what? It would actually probably look cute as a slip over. So I am sitting with it in my closet. I'm going to be using it as a slip over. I might block it. I mean, I probably should block it. These are not looking, if you can see, like going this way. They're not as nice as they are going this way. I don't know why, probably just the way I do my increases, or not increases, my like 1x1 cabling. So I should probably block it, and then I'd probably get a little bit better of wears out of it. But I think that until I put the sleeves on it, I might as well get use out of it. And this is the way I've been getting use out of it, and I think it's fine. I've talked about this so much in the other podcast, so I won't really go into the yarn or anything. If you want to learn about that, flip to the last one, or in about a month or so, I'll probably be talking about it again, because I do actually plan on doing the sleeves. I just don't have time right now. I don't have time. Can't do it. Slip over it is. Maybe we'll start with the knit that you know about that I will be hibernating. Then we'll do gift knits. Then we'll do test knits. And then we'll do yarn acquisitions. I think that will be the order of today. So this next knit is a knit that I was so excited to be knitting on, and was so excited to get the top on and finally be in the round. And it will now be sitting in hibernation likely until January. And it is my sweater in number 23 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. Since the last time I showed it to you guys, I think all I've really done is the neckline, which looks great. I did have to put some elastic in there just to cinch in a little bit. It's actually a lot of stitches that you pick up, so I'm wondering if you could avoid the use of the elastic if you just picked up less stitches around the neckline and it cinched itself in a little bit. But I really love the way that that looks, and it used the same method of double knitting as the Moby sweater did in the neckline. So these necklines are very, very similar. And I don't want to go into detail because I feel like that will be spoiling the pattern a little bit, but I love the color. I think it's going to go really well with my blue eyes. I am now in the round, and the shoulder detailing is just beautiful. But it will be hibernating for the next little bit because I have some test knits with some quick turnarounds, and with the gift knits on top of that, I'm just not going to have time, which is a shame because it's so fluffy and fun to work on, and now that it's in the round, it would just be such a mindless knit. But I've got other mindless knits to keep me going. I am using Drops Air in this navy color. I'm almost done this ball here, and Drops Kid Silk together to make this. I bought this Drops Air about a year ago when I was in Ottawa, and this Drops Kid Silk I got at Wool Warehouse. So they are making just the nicest combination. I had gotten the recommendation to pair Drops Air with this silk mohair, which I otherwise wouldn't have done because Drops Air is quite fluffy in and of itself. It doesn't necessarily have a halo. I'm not always looking for a halo in my knit, so that was fine for me. But Drops Air pills like crazy. So I got the recommendation on another podcast, I don't remember which one, that if you pair it with something, it really helps the fiber of the Drops Air kind of stick together and it doesn't pill as much. I haven't worn it, so I don't know if that's true. I haven't experienced any pilling from pulling it in and out of the tote bag I have it sitting in. But I will say that the fibers together do make a really, really lovely knit. And I would definitely, if this wears well, consider using these fibers together again. The only thing is that Drops Air, I think, is one of the most expensive fibers that Drops offers, and silk mohair is the other really expensive fiber that Drops offers. So I bought these separately, and I bought the mohair on sale. So in my head, it doesn't feel like quite as much of an expensive sweater. Drops Air, I can usually get a full sweater out of 6 skeins, but that would run you, if you're buying it in Canada, they're like 10 bucks a piece. So that's $60 right there, plus the mohair. It can really add up. It could very easily be a $100 sweater, and Drops isn't, I don't know, when I think of Drops and making a sweater out of Drops, I'm like, oh, that'll definitely be below $50. So I would say this is definitely on the luxury Drops end, and I am going to wait and see if I think it wears like a luxury item. Drops Air, I've had another sweater in it. It does pill like crazy, but I found it looks really nice as long as you're willing to put in the work to depill it often. And if this is the solution that I don't have to depill it often, I think I would definitely use it again, even with the price of these fibers. I think Drops Air is maybe not unique because there are a lot of other blown fibers on the market now, but for me, it's my favorite of the blown fibers that I've felt. I think it's the only blown fiber I've worked with so far. I've got some in my stash that I'm excited to work with. I've got the Snuff Nug and the Juniper Moon one. I don't know the name of it, but I'm excited to work with those two and see if I maybe like one of those better, but I think they're both more expensive anyway. So I think if you're looking for a blown yarn, this, and I haven't tried it, but the Knit Picks one has always intrigued me as well. They've got a fiber that looks very similar to this on their website. So let's get into gift knits. I will do the first straightforward one first, which is the blanket for my mom. Oh right, I had to take this off the needles. Okay. This is going to be fun to show. I had to take the needles off of it because I'm using it on the next gift knit. I only have one set of 6mm needles, but it is the rectangular, oh, I'm holding it backwards, rectangular bias blanket by Purl Soho. I think there's more words in there. It's a really long title. Rectangular bias striped blanket by Purl Soho. So it looks like this. I've got 5 stripes going on. This blue one, this is pretty much a full skein of the blue, and I'm going to do another full skein just to vary the sizing a little bit, and I had 2 of these anyways. So this is all made out of Cascade 220, and all of it is either from projects I've previously done or it is thrifted. And my mom had asked for a blanket out of scraps, and Cascade 220 is what I had the most of by far. So these 2 colors at the bottom here are both from my Lume. This one here is from my Marzipan pullover. These are all by Sorry Nordland. This white and this blue were both thrifted. So that's what that's looking like. I've got a few more colors to add in, and I have turned the corner. So you work on the bias and basically make a big triangle, and then you turn the corner and make it into a rectangle. And so from turning the corner, I've done this much. From turning the corner, I have to do 30 inches before I go back in. And so I've got maybe 10 here. So maybe a third, that might be being generous, maybe 6 here. And then alternate. So I've got a lot to do on this, but it's all garter stitch. This pattern is actually made for, I think, a sport weight yarn, and I am using their measurements, not their directions. The pattern's nice in that way that you can kind of substitute any kind of fiber gauge you want, but they have it. It's a free pattern, so I'm not spoiling it. Across is 42 inches and tall is 72 inches. I might have to make it a little bit shorter because I'm running out of time, but I think that that's a good throw blanket size. And I thought 6mm needles were going to fly by, but there's so many stitches on these needles now that the rows take a pretty long time. And this is like the biggest that the rows will be. And because they're going straight up for a little while, they're just staying at the same width as they would be. So the nice thing is that when I get to the second triangle, I'm going inwards. So everything's getting to be less stitches as you go along. But for right now, it's a bit of a slog. So it's just going back and forth and there's nothing really going on. But I think it'll actually be a lovely blanket when it's done. It's starting to be really warm when sitting on my lap. So I have to do it on a cooler day, which all the days have been pretty cold, but some places in my house get heated more than others. And so I have to make sure I'm sitting at like a cold part of the house, which is usually my office. My office is the furthest away from our heater, like our main heat source. And so I tend to knit it in there. If I knit it in this room, I find myself getting really overheated. So I would highly recommend that blanket pattern. I think that it would be very easy to adapt into a baby blanket pattern as well. And it's free. So that's always lovely to see as well. And I think it'll make a really good gift. I'm just desperately hoping I can get it done. Hopefully within the next 2 weeks. I would love to get it done before I move, but if that's not possible, then I mean it has to be done before Christmas Eve, so that's my only option. It's my only option. That's the only thing we can do here. The next knit is, I think, the one I'm most excited about. Let me show you. I need to take a minute. I feel like I've been talking so fast and just been flying past all these knits. And I think it's because there's so much going on and it feels very overwhelming that I feel like I need to fly by. But in reality, I think I've talked about 3 knits already and it's less than 20 minutes into the video. So I think I can take a little bit of a break. But this next knit I am really excited about. I got a call from my mom a week ago or so to say that my cousin was going to be coming to town and she just had a baby, which is very exciting. She is my first cousin, so the baby is, I think, technically first cousin once removed, if that's how it works, but he is just turned 2 months old, and so I thought if I made him a sweater in the 3 to 6 month size, it would be perfect. I just saw on Facebook, though, she just posted that he is a big boy, and he is actually already fitting into 6 month clothing. So I am almost on the body of the sweater and I'm a little worried it might be too small for him, but let me show you anyways, and let's just pray that it will fit him. Ah, it's so tiny. I love it so much. So this is what it's looking like. As soon as I decided to do a quick baby knit for him, these were the yarns that came to mind right away. I am using a free basic baby raglan pattern, and I don't remember the name nor the designer, so I will link them down below. It's a free pattern, and I was looking around all basically the baby free patterns because I felt like I could find something for free. There's some beautiful paid ones. PetiteKnit has some lovely ones. Knit Purl Girl has some great ones. But I figured I could probably find something for free, and I did. And this was the pattern that the neckline looked the best on the babies. If that makes sense. I saw a lot of them that because there's so few stitches in the neckline kind of tends to go droopy. And for this one, for whatever reason, it seemed like the neckline was the perfect fit. So I have made desperately sure that the gauge was right on for this because I really wanted it to be a 3 to 6 month size, because I figured if it went to the 6 to 12, he would be in summer and he wouldn't be able to wear it. And now I think I've overcompensated because I think I don't know, I hope it's not too small for him. It seems decently big. I don't know, like this is my hand, this is sweater. Do you think it would? I don't interact with enough babies that if a baby was in 6-month sizes, would this sweater fit him? I don't know. But the body is getting there. It's just in the round, and I decided to add some stripes. In the original sweater of this pattern, there are stripes, and she has instructions on how to do them. I am going rogue, and I just did what I thought looked best. Other people who have done this pattern have done thicker stripes. Some have done no stripes at all. So this seems like a really adaptable pattern. And I am using the We Are Knitters cotton in 2 colors. This is their cream and their rust color. I don't know if those are the official names. I actually thrifted these or got them secondhand. I got them on Marketplace. They were originally for a blanket, a baby blanket pattern. And I could have done that, but I really wanted to make a cute little baby sweater. And I thought cotton would be perfect. She can throw it in the washer and then hang it to dry. And I just didn't want anything she'd have to fuss with. So I was considering using acrylic, but I just thought that this cotton would be really good, especially under a jacket. I didn't want him to be too much overheating. And so it's just been so enjoyable to knit on. So I'm seeing them next week. So well before Christmas. And so I need to get a move on with this, but I think it's gonna go by so fast. I mean, it already has. I think I could do like stripe to stripe in like 15 to 20 minutes or so. So I mean a couple hours on this thing and he'll be done. And it has just made me want to knit a whole baby wardrobe because it is so fast and it's so fun. It is so cute to look at. You can just use like 16 or 20 for in circulars and fly. And yeah, I need more babies in my life is what I'm learning, I guess. I mean, when I have my own baby, I'm hoping to make them a decently substantial handmade baby wardrobe. And if any of my very good friends or family decide to have a baby, I mean, this cousin, I would make him a lot more clothes, but they actually live quite far away, so I wouldn't really have a way of getting them to her. And we don't talk all that much. She's great. We never lived close to each other, and so that's that. So I feel like it would be weird if I just presented her baby with like a wardrobe of clothes. So I think a sweater will be good. And then if I get the urge to make more baby knits in the future, maybe I'll just make a little chest for myself and my future child to one day enjoy them. Is that weird? That's probably the weirdest thing. I know people do this with socks. Like people who are prolific sock knitters are like sometimes they'll knit a whole bunch and then put them away for gifts. And is that normal to do with baby clothes, or does that bring you into the weird sector? I don't know, maybe I can donate them. That might actually be a nice thing to do. I know they do that with the hospital takes hand knit preemie hats, and I feel like that would be really sweet, a really sweet knit to make. Anyway, would highly recommend making a little baby knit, especially if you haven't done it before. It's just been so joyful, and I've been knitting it and really dreaming about this little boy's life and the life of our future kids, and I found it such kind of a meditative and uplifting knit to do, much more so than some of the personal knits where when you're dreaming about the future of wearing it, all you can really think about is like, oh, I'll look really good in this sweater. Where it's like, this little boy could be wearing this sweater when he first eats his solids. That's adorable. I mean, I hope not. Like, that would make a mess. But like firsts can be done in this sweater. How many firsts are lasted in an adult's life? Not enough. Not enough. Anyways, this sweater is just adorable. Let's do my husband's knit first, and then I will show you the last catastrophic gift knit. So for my husband, this is a combined birthday and Christmas gift. His birthday's in less than a week. It is not going to be done before then. And at this point, I don't even know if it'll be done before Christmas, but he's my husband and he has to forgive me. So I love you. I'm sorry. I am doing the Bee's Knees cardigan by Thea Colman. It looks like this. It's really nice. It has this kind of all over stitch pattern, and then on the edges it has beautiful cabling. And so I've got about one more repeat to do, maybe a little more, a repeat and a half maybe to do before I split for sleeves. So I'm not like detrimentally behind, but I know that my family would care more if I show up to Christmas with nothing than my husband would. My husband and I aren't big gift people. We kind of get things as we need them. And so I know that he won't be offended if the cardigan isn't done for Christmas or his birthday for that matter. So I'm less concerned about the deadline for this for him, but it is definitely a priority to be knitting on, if that makes sense. I am knitting this out of Drops Lima, and that is because it is the yarn he requested. He felt a bunch of yarns in my stash and he decided this is the one. And I did end up ordering more of it from Wool Warehouse. I talked about that in last episode. I ordered, I think, 6 balls and it has yet to come. So hopefully soon. I am excited to receive that. That's the other thing I think why I haven't been rushing through it, is that I know I'm gonna run out of yarn at some point, and that would just be, I think it would just be discouraging in a weird way. But yeah, it's been a really enjoyable knit. I really like the way that Thea Colman has done her patterns, and I would love to knit more of her designs in the future. She is a designer that I only discovered semi-recently this fall, and I really love a lot of her designs. I think that she has a really great way of mastering cables, and I really like that most of her designs are in a worsted weight, so it makes them really achievable in a way that like a fingering weight cabled sweater would feel really overwhelming. So I think that her knits are challenging but also approachable, if that makes sense. I would highly recommend checking them out. But this one's been really enjoyable, but I also feel like I haven't hit the hard part yet, where there's some interesting cabling along the back. This stitch pattern is really nice because on one row it's mostly knitting, but on the front it's mostly purling. So it's actually reverse rows fly by way faster than your right side rows, which is kind of interesting. You don't usually get that in a knit, but it has made me mildly terrified for the sleeves, as I think it's going to be Purl City, and I'm not necessarily looking forward to Purl City, but I'll let that be the future, and I'm hoping, desperately hoping, that I can finish the body of this sweater sooner rather than later. Hey, so I'm sorry if the camera moved. I had to get up and move it. So that's that. Let's move on to the knit that has caused me the most stress over the next couple of days, and it is the cardigan for my dear sister. I had initially made a Sunday cardigan for her. I had finished the whole body. I will put a picture up somewhere, and was getting started on the sleeves, and I was trying it on as I went, and it was fine. But when I picked up the sleeves and I picked up all the stitches, the sleeve was way too tight. The whole body of the Sunday cardigan, it's by PetiteKnit, is pretty baggy. Not baggy, but like baggy enough that sleeves being very tight with 0 to negative ease looked really weird. And I tried to pick up the stitches again, and it just was not working. And I cannot, to this day, figure out what the heck I did with it. I don't know if there was something with gauge, but I measured the gauge and I was a little above. So if anything, the arm should be big. I'm wondering if the chest part was a little short, and perhaps that did it. Like I should have knit longer before splitting for sleeves, perhaps. I could not figure out what was wrong with it. I stared at it for a really long time, and if it was me, I probably would have fudged something, but it's for my sister and it's a gift, and I didn't want to give her something subpar. So I decided to knit a completely different cardigan for her. And just to give you an idea, the Sundays, so I had bought 10 balls of Drops Andes for this, and I had put 5.5 into the Sunday sweater already. So I was more than halfway through the yarn and definitely more than halfway done the knit. And I am working towards a deadline, and I decided, screw it, I'm gonna start it all again. So I went on the hunt for a cardigan pattern that was in a large needle size, Drops Andes recommends a 9mm, but I had done the Sunday sweater in an 8mm and I thought it looked a little sloppy. And I know that my knitting, not to brag, is incredibly even. So I knew it was the yarn, and so I was like, you know what, I think if I knit it slightly tighter, it might fix the ways in which this yarn looks a little amateur. And not all bulky yarn looks this way. I think that this particular yarn, because it has a pretty high spin, and it's just, I think it's the alpaca content. It's got a pretty high percentage of alpaca content, which causes a lot of drape, which I don't think necessarily goes with a thicker yarn. I don't know. I've been trying to reason in my head why this yarn, I feel like, looks a little sloppy on a lot of projects, and I really can't figure it out. But I will say, I think I found the perfect combination. So I had test knit, and I'm test knitting another cardigan sweater for the Knit Purl girl, for Sophie. And when you test knit for her, she gives you a pick of free patterns from her site. And so one of my picks I decided was to go with the Aosta Cardigan. It uses 7mm needles in the body, 6mm needles for the ribbing, and I thought it would fly by pretty fast. It has a really cool stitch pattern, which means that you can hack it so that you're not purling as much, which is what I did. And I think it's going really well. Let me show you. It's at a really awkward part because I am right now knitting the ribbing around the button band, and so I have all these stitches scrunched up on this needle, so it's a little bit difficult to show you right now. I'm just going to make sure it doesn't all fall off, but I have basically finished the body for the second time. So it's looking like this. Let me show you the back. That's probably the easiest way to see the stitch pattern. So I think it's called the Andalusian stitch or something like that. It is made just with knits and purls, and it creates this really cool like box mosaic look along the cardigan. It's a raglan, and I think it looks 10 times better than the Sunday sweater ever did, to the point where I want to keep it. And I think that's what you should want out of gift knit. So I think it's looking so good. Because it's a gift knit again, I decided to do an Italian bind off just to make it a little bit cleaner along the bottom. And I'm planning to do that with the button band as well. So right now I am knitting, the reason I'm not really showing the front is I am right now knitting the button band, so all of these stitches are scrunched up on here. I've got about 3 more rows to do before I can bind this off, and that's gonna take forever in an Italian bind off. Even in the pattern, they don't recommend an Italian bind off. And I'm like, no, no, no. I'm gonna go extra with this knit. So once this neckband is done, I can just do the arms. I think the arms are gonna fly by because it's much more knitting than purling. It's again on 7mm needles, so you can go pretty fast. And I have done all of this in 2.5 days. So when I say it has been chaotic and I'm a little unhinged, this is what I'm talking about, this cardigan. I do love the pattern though. The armholes are more than big enough for a good thick, I mean, my sister's arms aren't thick, but like a good size arm, maybe with like a sweater underneath if you want to. That's the other thing, this yarn is so thick, like you want to be able to wear something underneath it because you're not just wearing it on its own, likely. You're probably putting it on like a long sleeve. So it's really made me fall in love with the Aosta pattern. I've purchased a few of her Aosta collection and I haven't made any of it yet. And this is making me want to do the sweater and a cardigan for myself because I just think that this pattern really suits this yarn, but also just looks really cool from a distance. So once I block it, it is going to stretch out a little bit, which is going to be perfect. I think the body is a really good length, and I'm just really happy with the way that this is turning out, as I should be for a gift knit. So really, really glad that I was able to salvage this. I was able to salvage the yarn. Is it catastrophic? Did I waste a whole bunch of time? Yes, I did, especially because I don't know what lesson I've learned here. I don't know how it happened, and I don't think it's the Sunday sweater pattern. Tons of people have made it and it's been absolutely fine for them, but I don't know how I screwed this one up. but I'm glad I now have something that looks okay. I would love to revisit the Sunday sweater or the Sunday cardigan one day. I've done the Sunday sweater. It worked absolutely. Sorry, my nose is so itchy right now. I've made the Sunday sweater before. It worked absolutely fine for me. So I really don't know how I messed up the Sunday cardigan so horrifically. I have no idea. The one thing I will say is I've been avoiding cardigans that have a pickup button band for a while, just because I hadn't been loving the way that they look, kind of having the ribbing coming out this way. But I think on this cardigan, I actually really like it. So I might do some more cardigans with this kind of pickup button band in the future. I just need to be careful. You actually pick up a lot of stitches for this button band, and I think to make it a little cinched, make sure that it doesn't flare out, I'm going to have to be careful with an Italian bind off to find a balance between being tight and being too loose that it's going to look sloppy. And I think that'll be a challenge. I find that the Italian bind off is easiest with yarns that are one fiber because they don't stick to each other as much. You can kind of pull it and replace it. This has alpaca in it and it wants to stick to itself really easily. I find that mohair also does the same. And so when I was doing the Italian bind off at the bottom, I found that I could not easily adjust how tight or loose I wanted it. It was kind of, I did it the first time and then I'd maybe have 2 or 3 stitches later to adjust it, but I could not do it in a bunch. Like if I pulled on it, it would not go very far, if that makes sense. I think if you've done an Italian bind off, you can know what I'm talking about. So I think that this will be a balancing act, and I think to do an Italian bind off on this button band is going to take a couple hours because that's a lot of yarn and it's going to be a lot of yarn to be threading through. I did have another question. If you are familiar with the Italian bind off, they say to make sure that you have 3 times the length of yarn to pull through. Does anyone else find that's always too much yarn? I always have a ton of yarn left over at the end of doing Italian bind offs, and it seems really wasteful for me. If I go 2.5 or 2 times, do you guys think I'm completely screwing myself over? Because it's a lot of yarn and I really don't want to waste it. I have a scrap bag of yarn that I want to use as stuffing at some point in the future for something. So it's not a complete waste, but it does feel like I can be using that yarn better. I don't know. Tell me what you think. That is it for gift knits for now. I still have to make a hat and mitts for my dad, and I found out that there is some extended family going to be at our Christmas as well, and so I'm going to try and knit up some toques for them in a worsted or bulky weight so that it goes by pretty quick. But seeing everything I have in front of me, I make no promises about that. Now I will show you my 2 test knits, or otherwise known as my mistakes. So the yarn just got caught on my camera, so it moved again. Sorry. Yes, this next test knit is from Sophie, the Knit Purl girl, and she announced a test knit for her Semper sweater V-neck, in which she only needed the body done because the sleeves are identical to her Semper sweater, the regular one. And so I was like, oh, I can definitely do the body of this. I love testing for Sophie and I really love the design of this sweater. And initially I was going to do it in a dusty pink color. I was going to combine my thrifted mohair, the orangey pink one, and I was going to do it with lichen and lace yarn that I've been holding on to for a while that I had intended to make a fingering weight sweater out of, and I might still do that, but I decided that I wanted to give my eyes a break from that mohair because I've been staring at it for so long while skating and washing it up, and I had this in my stash to make a different Knit Purl girl sweater, and I just decided to repurpose it for this one instead. And so this is what it is looking like. I am just doing the raglan. It is knit with a strand of fingering weight and a strand of mohair. And I am using Drops Flora and Drops Kid Silk that I had just gotten from Wool Warehouse. So this Drops Flora is in the shade 03. and I don't have the shade for this one, unfortunately. There will be a project page linked down below that will have the actual color names listed, but they are basically your gray white colors, very light gray colors. And I really like the way that these are knitting up. The initial original sample of Sophie's is knit in Knitting for Olive's merino and mohair, and that is a beautiful combination. It would just make for a much pricier sweater than this one, and I actually have that combination stash. I had initially started making a, what's that cardigan called? Champagne cardigan? No, that's the thicker one. PetiteKnit has a DK weight cardigan in a mohair and fingering weight, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but I had started to make it. I had gotten a good chunk down the yoke, and I realized I had done the increases wrong, and I'd have to rip back basically to the beginning, and I adored the fabric that I was making out of it, and I have all intentions in starting that over again, but I just got distracted with other things. And so I think that her sample must feel divine, and other people have been making it. I would encourage you to look at the hashtag if this is something that you're interested in making. A lot of people are done the yoke already, which is a lot of knitting. It is knit on, I think, her original was on 4.5 millimeter needles, and to get gauge I had to go down to 4 millimeter needles. So it is just a lot of stitches and a lot of knitting. I think it is going to make a really beautiful, really wearable garment, but I think it's going to be a bit of a slow knit. And so this test is due, I believe, at the end of January, and so I do have a little bit more time for this, but I think I'll need it. And thankfully I only have to get the body done in that time, and so I can give myself a little bit more grace with those arms, because I do think that they're going to take a while in 4 millimeter. They're going to have, the one thing about Sophie's patterns is they always have quite generous armholes. I don't know, but as someone who has, as my husband likes to call it, bingo arms, I appreciate the generous armholes, but it just means that there's much more stitches on the arms, and my husband does it in a very loving way, just to be very clear. I'm the one who first said bingo arms. He didn't actually know what it meant, but since I've explained the term to him, he finds it hilarious, and so it has continued to be used in my household. But that's besides the point. This has been a lovely knit, and I hope I can finish a lot more of the Raglan by the next time that you see it. But to be honest, it is not at the very top of my priority list, just because the test does go on a little bit longer. And I do know that as soon as the test is done, she has intentions of releasing it right away. So it should be released early in the new year if it's something that you want to cast on. The next test knit was a wild throw out into the ether. I have been so in love with Ozetta's patterns lately. I am knitting a cardigan, which is not even here because I haven't even knit on it in the past 2 weeks. And I have knit her shirt. What's the name of that shirt? Moonset tee, her moonset tee. Love that pattern. And I knit her shirt jacket. And now I have signed up, basically since the shirt jacket, I have signed up for every single test knit that she has put out, and I've never gotten selected. And of course, when I'm the busiest I could possibly be, I get selected for a test knit, and I am thrilled, but I am overwhelmed. So this is what I've knit so far. This is called the Port Sweater, and it is her latest pullover pattern. It is a very simple drop shoulder pullover, and it has a really cool, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, I just started it, ribbing detailing along the arms, and I think it looks really, really lovely. It's in a worsted and mohair combination, but I am just doing it in a worsted weight, heavy worsted yarn, and I am using Twin Oaks Farm worsted 2-ply. Looks like this, and this is 100% wool from Canadian farms. This Twin Oaks Farms is a farm that is somewhat local to me. I think they're based out of Guelph. I know they're in southern Ontario. I think they're from the Guelph area. I don't know for sure, but I actually picked up, this is the yarn that I picked up at the Hamilton Fibre Festival back in March or April, and I've been holding on to it, waiting for some kind of woolly pullover, and I thought this is perfect. One of the things that I love about Ozetta is the fibres that she chooses and the colors that she chooses. They're all very earthy tones, very woolly wools, and I really love the look of her garments, and especially when she'll sometimes show like all of her garments stacked on top of each other, and they all follow the same color story. And I wish I was that decisive in the colors that I liked, instead of being like, I love yellow and green. But anyway, so I figured for my first Ozetta, and hopefully not last Ozetta test knit, I had to do something that was a little more fibery, a little more neutral, and I chose this color, and it's been really lovely to knit on. I think I felt a knitted up and blocked garment that was made out of this, and it was so soft. So I'm so excited to feel how this feels once soaked. It does have some spinning oil left in it. It smells not, unless you get your nose right up in there, it doesn't really smell like spinning oil. You really can't feel it on your hands, but you can definitely smell the spinning oil. And I think that is probably what you smell much more than like a woolly smell. Yeah, I think once the spinning oil will be gone, it will smell more woolly, but for now it's a little rustic smelling, a little kind of down and dirty. This is the color dark gray. I also have a brown color from them, and I was going back and forth on which I wanted to use for this, but right now I've been finding it a little bit difficult to wear my brown sweater, just because I wear mostly black pants, and I don't feel like the dark browns and the blacks go together necessarily, and I don't wear a lot of jeans to work, and I wanted to be able to wear the sweater to work. So I went with the gray, and I'm gonna have a think about what pants I want to wear with my future brown sweater. That's weird to say, but it's true. So yeah, this is so you start off with short panels. This is the back of the sweater, and so basically I'm like at the top of the armhole now, and then I'll knit down. And I've seen some people already finish their back panel, so I would definitely encourage you to look up the hashtag if you want to see some more options. I feel like everyone in the test group is knitting a green version, and they are beautiful. I love the test group that I'm in. I love seeing their options come together. This test knit has quite a tight turnaround. It is due at the end of the month. So this pattern should be releasing very early in the new year. And I really need to get to knitting because I need to finish the whole sweater this month, the month that I am moving, the month that I have gift knits, the month that I should not have signed up for this, but I have no self-control and I want the sweater, I want it. So, who needs sleep? Who needs sleep? The other thing is that I signed up to do, to help a colleague with his marking, and I mean, it's a paid job. It'll be great. I'm not TAing this term, so that's fine. But it means I'm also working more the next 2 weeks. So it's like, what was I thinking? I wasn't. So I have been really punishing myself for not being as productive as I should have been in the last 2 months. Part of it is that long COVID has been really difficult on my lungs with the turning of the season, and I found it very difficult to breathe. The week that I went down to -15, I had to stay in my house because I could not breathe. If I stepped outside, it just completely took the wind out of me. And I haven't been able to work out like I used to, and it's been really, really tough, and I think it's been really bringing me down. And I think that's why I've been knitting so chaotically, but also so much, is because I feel like I'm not much good for much else. And I think that the busyness of the next month is really going to help me, so that when I do my January reset or whatever else in the next month, it's going to set me up to be in a better spot where I know that I'm capable of doing more things than I'm doing right now. And it's sad that I've had to relearn that. I used to work 70 to 80 hour weeks, which is too much. That's not what I want to get back to. But when I was in undergrad, I had a full-time job. And sometimes I think back to that version of myself where I was working full-time, in school full-time, and still found 10 to 20 hours a week to volunteer at my church. And it feels like a different person because I just don't have that ability nor the stamina to be able to do that anymore. And I wish I did. I look back on that person and all that she achieved in that time, and sometimes I miss it, but other times I feel like it's silly to calculate my self-worth with my production. It is a very capitalist mindset, and I need to remind myself that I am valuable in who I am because it's who I am, and that I need to find the balance of doing enough with my life that it gives me joy and purpose and a drive, but not doing too much that it completely burns me out. Because I think that's also part of what I'm experiencing is I just went through a really chaotic year leading up to my comprehensive exams, and now that it's over, I can finally take a deep breath. And I have to get back into my own research, but there's no external deadlines on me. And so I think I am also experiencing a bit of burnout. And I think the combination of the weather turning, not being able to breathe, having a bunch of health problems, and burnout has created this vacuum in which I don't feel very content with my life, and I don't know how to get out of it. And I'm really hoping that the next couple of weeks, being able to see family and friends, being forced into situations that I may have otherwise spread out or said no to, will convince myself that I am still capable and show myself that I can create the life that I want for myself, and that it won't be exhausting to do so. So if you're feeling similar, just know that I see you. And if you want to share your experience down below, I'm sure there will be lovely people to be able to talk to you. But I really want to move my knitting practice into something that is healing and something that is a respite from work as opposed to distraction from it. And I think that will be the biggest challenge that I will hopefully be trying to document in the series that I have coming after Christmas. So stay tuned for that. That was pretty heavy. Let's talk about some acquisitions that will not be as much. So I'm going to do my acquisitions out of order and leave the most exciting for last. So I got 2 things of yarn while I was in Ottawa. I wasn't really planning to go yarn shopping, but I saw that, well, one of my favorite yarn stores is there first off. Wool Time, I think is the name of it. It is not downtown Ottawa. It is on the way to my friend's house, if that helps. And it's definitely very easily accessible by car, but if you're staying in downtown Ottawa, I don't think it would be the easiest place to get to. I don't know. It's kind of it's like on an industrial street. It's very odd, but it is, they say that they're the biggest yarn store in Canada. I don't know if that's true. I think it's probably the biggest yarn store I've been to in Canada. The Yarn Loft in Toronto is probably the next closest, or maybe Romney in Toronto. I would say those 3 are probably the biggest I've been to. I don't know what is the biggest, but I really like this yarn store because they have pretty much all of Drops, all of Cascade, and they also have an amazing Breaks and Little section. And Breaks and Little is a Canadian yarn, and I have been wanting to try their country roving for a long time, or at least feel it. And so I went in there with the intention of just getting 1 skein of country roving, and by God's graces, that's all I got. So this is the country roving. It is their version of an unspun yarn. I think it is softer than Plutalopi. It's probably about equivalent to Manchio Slopi. But I'm thinking of doing an unspun comparison because I have quite a few cakes or discs of unspun yarn now, and I have some thoughts about them. And I have not knit with all of them, but I want to knit up some swatches and just give some first impressions and thoughts if you are thinking of doing some unspun. But my version will be a little bit more Canadian focused, so I don't know if that would be something of interest to everyone. I now have 5 different brands discs of unspun yarn, but 2 of them are Canadian. One, Briggs & Little, I think is decently accessible outside of Canada, and the other one from, what are they called? I think they're just called the Wool Company. They're a local-ish place to me, and they made an unspun, and I don't think that's terribly accessible outside of Canada, so I don't know how much use that would be. But this yarn, I think I'm going to make an accessory with. I only got 1 plate of it. It's around $12. And what's interesting about it is that it comes in strands of 5. So the unspun strands are wrapped around the disc, and there's 5 different strands, which is so interesting to me. So it's sold as like a bulky to super bulky yarn, and you're supposed to hold all 5 of them together. I think they were worried about like the strength, but it just seems very interesting to me, because if I was going to make this yarn, I would probably do it 2 strands around, and then if you wanted to hold more, you just hold multiple plates together. I don't know why they did 5 around. And I will also say this is super dense. Like they really wrapped this in a way that some other unspuns don't. And let's do a bit of a spoiler. Newton, for example, not nearly as dense. Like look how much this squishes compared to this. Like this is dense. Anyways, I'm very excited to do a comparison of all of these rovings, and I'm really excited to knit an accessory out of it. It actually does feel pretty soft. I don't know if I could give it to a non-knitter. I think they'd still find this a little bit scratchy, but for me, I think a hat or a hat and cowl, or maybe some fingerless gloves. I think that's what this is destined to be. But I was choosing between this and a green color. They actually have decent color selection of this, but I decided that black would just be more practical for my wardrobe, and I actually have no black accessories, so I think this will be perfect for that. The other thing that I picked up in Ottawa is that we went out to a bar for food and drinks, and it just so happens that the place we were in, there was a Christmas market going on, and because it was Ottawa and we were in a student-y sector of town, it was at least a 40-minute wait, so we ended up walking through the market just to kind of see what was going on, stay warm, I don't know, see what's up. And I ended up coming across a booth, and they had this beautiful alpaca yarn. And I wasn't really looking for yarn, but I saw it and I was like, okay, well, I have to have that. And this is Alpaca Tracks Thread Lightly. This yarn was created by blending Joni, Carlos, Haley, and Jan's beautiful fiber. I love that. It is 70% alpaca, 20% merino, and 10% bamboo. It is 3-ply and 200 yards per skein. So I think it's about a DK to worsted weight, and it's $25 for the skein. And I just got it in this brown color. So they were mostly selling hand knit goods with this yarn, but they did have a few skeins of yarn. And the reason it looks so messy, it looked beautiful in the skein before, is that my friend's dog found it and ripped it apart a little bit. Thankfully, he didn't actually break the yarn. I think the bamboo gives it a bit of strength, but I did have to re-skein it up. So it's a little bit messier than it would have otherwise been, just because, yeah, there were some dogs involved. But yeah, I haven't actually looked up their website very much. It's alpaca-tracks.com, and it feels like a really lovely yarn. I love alpaca for accessories. It gives such drape, and with the merino and bambino, I was gonna say the merino and the bambino. The merino and the bamboo, I think, just makes a really lovely yarn. And this, like the other, I think is destined for an accessory. This might become a gift knit. I think it would make a really lovely hat. And finally, the season finale of my acquisitions is Newton. So I had posted on my Instagram that I had received a Newton order. I stayed up late till midnight. It was midnight Eastern time that the sale went live, and I was able to pick up some Newton, and I actually picked the wrong color. I accidentally ordered the color that I was not intending to, but I think it worked out fine. I don't know if these colors will come up as much because it's just so dark in here, but these are the 2 colors I got. I will put the colors on the screen because they are in Swedish and I don't remember them. So this wasn't one of the special colors that she came out with this time. I think this is her uncolored yarn. And on the website, I will say this looked much more like a gray neutral, and this is much more of a creamy neutral. So it's definitely warm toned, and I wasn't expecting it to be as warm toned as it is. And I looked back up the picture that was shown, and it is definitely lighter. So I would just warn you, if you are going to get this color, it is definitely warm toned. I don't think that's a problem. It's a color that I love anyways, but was not what I was expecting. So I got 300 grams of each. I was looking up when ordering Newton because each of the cakes actually have a different weight of yarn. They're all similar, but some of them are a bit thicker than others. And I saw that some people could get a sweater out of 300 grams. And she sells them either as 100 grams, 300 grams, or 500 grams. And I knew I wanted it to 2 different colors. So 2 quantities of the 300 grams made sense to me. That said, now that I've received it, I think I'm gonna make a color work with these colors as they look just so beautiful together. And I don't know if I'll be able to get 2 sweaters out of it, but I should at least be able to get a sweater and something else. And maybe I do a big oversized sweater to be able to use up as much of the yarn as possible. I don't know. But I will say this is by far, people are not kidding, Knitwear is by far the softest unspun yarn I've ever felt. And even comparing the softness of this to this, I would say that they're almost comparable. Obviously, alpaca trumps pretty much any kind of wool, but this is genuinely so unbelievably soft. I felt it, I'm like, oh, I understand why people are obsessed with this yarn, because it draws the line between it being a rustic woolly yarn, but also being unbelievably soft and fluffy. So 300 grams got me 4 plates of each, but the plates are different sizes. You can even tell between these two that the dark brown plate is much denser than the light. So the plates that you get are not all the same size, but they equal 300 grams within the package. So if you have any color work sweaters that uses an equal amount of yarns of each color, let me know. I've been perusing, I've got some ideas, but I'm interested to see if you have any ideas as to what you think I can make for this. I feel like with all of the knits going on right now, this is definitely a priority to cast on next. I'm thinking this will end up being a February knit for me, but I'm looking forward to it immensely. I think it'll be really nice to knit with. Unspun, of course, is a little challenging to knit with just because it floats away. But I think that the finished project will be well worth it. And I ended up joining the Patreon group to try and get ahead. Gibson, what are you chewing? Sorry, he was chewing on my Peloton bike, and that is not allowed and very abnormal for him. So sorry about that. Can't have him destroying the Peloton bike. That thing costs a fortune. Anyways, I forget what I was saying now, but I am very excited about my new Knitwear yarn. I have it on display in my house, as I also think the cakes are just beautiful. I can't wait to have my craft room. I have ordered some shelving that I think will display my yarn really well. I'm very lucky. I've never encountered a moth in my area. I live downtown. There's not a lot of wildlife near me, and I'm not moving far from here, so I'm not very concerned with putting my yarn away. I mean, maybe I'm going into an old house, that might change, but I have never encountered a moth even outside. So I'm not as concerned about that. I really want to have my yarn on display. I really love the way that yarn looks, and I really want to just look at it and enjoy it. And I think that one of the things that I love about Knitwear is it seems like a yarn that you can really enjoy looking at, and then enjoy knitting with, and then enjoy wearing. And I think those are the best kinds of yarn. So, excuse me, although this was definitely an investment and it was definitely a little steep, I am really happy with it so far, and I'm hoping that the finished garment will be just as great as everyone says it is, and maybe, just maybe, this won't be the last Knitwear purchase I end up making, and there will be more in my future. So that's all I have to talk about today. If you want to check out some of my secondhand yarn that I'm selling, again, the link is down below. The store will be up until this upcoming Friday. And thank you for joining me. I hope that you all have an amazing week, and I will see you next time. Bye.